Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we sit down to record one of these, I have a certain energy. I'm excited. We've got a stack of articles, maybe a biography or breakdown of a new tech trend, and the goal is always the same, to make you, the listener, the smartest person in the room. But today is weird. Today is different. I've been staring at the dossier you sent over, the one titled The Zootopia Project, and I have to be honest with you. I feel a little bit betrayed.
Betrayed. That's a strong word for a movie review.
It's not just a movie review, though, is it? That's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
I'm talking about Zootopia. And look, before we even get into the heavy stuff, I have to confess something to you and to everyone listening. I love this movie. I saw it in theaters in 2016. I bought the Blu-ray. I thought it was this beautiful, masterfully crafted message about inclusivity, about trying everything, about overcoming your internal biases. I thought it was Disney at its absolute peak of storytelling.
And that is exactly why the propaganda works so well.
See, that right there, that's the sentence that ruined my week. Because I sent you this source material expecting you to come back with, I don't know, some fun trivia about fur rendering technology or how they animated the sloths. Instead, you came back and told me that I didn't watch a heartwarming buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
You told me I just watched a 2-hour documentary on state-sponsored terrorism and the mechanics of a coup.
That's because you did. And I know that sounds like hyperbole. I know that sounds like we're wearing tinfoil hats here. But if you strip away the cute animals, if you ignore the Shakira song, and you look strictly at the plot mechanics, the economics, the political maneuvering, the police procedure, Zootopia is not a movie about a bunny becoming a cop. It is a rigorously constructed socio-political allegory for the 1980s CIA-backed crack epidemic. It is a blueprint for how a government manufactures a public enemy to justify the expansion of a police state.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately because that is a massive claim. You were saying that the central plot device of this Disney movie, The Night Howlers Turning Animals Savage, is actually a stand-in for crack cocaine.
It is not just a stand-in. It is a one-to-one mapping. The thesis of the research we are looking at today is that the film exposes the mechanism of false flag operations. The night howlers are not just magic flowers. They are a weaponized narcotic introduced into a specific community to destabilize it. And the savage outbreaks, those aren't biological accidents. That is a government-orchestrated campaign to create fear.
I feel like I've been duped.
And
I honestly feel like I fell for the state propaganda hook, line, and sinker. I sat there eating my popcorn, cheering for Judy Hopps, while apparently I was watching the dismantling of civil liberties.
you were watching the manufacture of a savage subject. That's the core concept we need to start with. In the film, the public is led to believe that predators are reverting to their primitive ways. But what we, the audience, actually see if we look past the protagonist's bias is a targeted intelligence operation.
So we have a lot to get through. A lot. We need to talk about the drugs, the deep state villain, the racial allegories, and the police. But let's start with the mechanism itself, the night howlers. In the movie, it starts as a flower, right? Midnicampum holocysthius.
Correct. It's a Class C botanical. On its own, in nature, it's just a plant. It's a pest repellent. But think about how it appears in the film. It doesn't stay a plant. The crisis doesn't happen because animals are grazing in a field and accidentally eat a flower. The crisis happens because the plant is processed.
Right, it becomes those little blue pellets, the ones in the gun.
Exactly, and that transition is crucial. The source material emphasizes this distinction between the botanical and the industrial. When we see the night howler serum being created, where are we?
We're in that abandoned subway car, the hidden one.
And who is running the lab?
Okay, I laughed at this when I saw it. It's 2 Rams in yellow hazmat suits named Walter and Jesse.
Right, the Breaking Bad reference.
I thought that was just a fun pop culture nod. You know, something for the parents in the audience to chuckle at while the kids look at the colors.
It is never just a nod. In this context, that visual reference is doing very heavy lifting. Breaking Bad is the quintessential story about the industrialization of methamphetamine. By invoking that imagery, the filmmakers are telling us that this isn't some accidental exposure to a poisonous plant. This is a professionalized, industrial-scale manufacturing operation. They are refining the product.
So they're taking the raw material, the plant, and turning it into a street drug.
A weaponized one. They're concentrating the psychotropic properties to create a supersaturated serum. The report draws a direct line here to the 1980s. You had powder cocaine, which was expensive, elite, and generally associated with the upper class or the disco scene. It was a soft drug in the public imagination, relatively speaking. Then you had the shift to crack cocaine, cheaper, highly concentrated, and chemically altered to produce a more intense, immediate, and destabilizing high.
And the night howler serum does exactly that. It targets the brain.
Specifically the cerebellum. It hyperstimulates primitive aggression and causes a total loss of higher brain function. It wipes the slate clean and leaves only rage. The report compares this savage state to the induced mania and social destabilization associated with the crack epidemic. It creates a visible spectacle of violence.
That's the key, isn't it? The visibility.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that the animals go crazy, it's how they are targeted. I watched the movie again with these notes and I realized something terrifying. The outbreaks aren't random.
No, they are precision hits.
They use that air-powered sniper gun.
Which is a delivery system designed for plausible deniability. If you shoot someone with a bullet, there is ballistics evidence. There is a casing. There is a rifling mark. If you shoot someone with a dissolving ice pellet of concentrated serum.
It looks like a biological breakdown. It leaves no trace.
Exactly. It mimics a natural event.
And look at who they target. Mr. Otterton, Mr. Manchas.
Why do you think those specific individuals were chosen?
Well, Manchas was a limousine driver. Otterton was a florist. They were just regular citizens.
They were regular predator citizens who were in public or semi-public spaces. The goal was to create a narrative. You don't target the recluse living in a basement. You target the guy who is going to run out into the street and scream. You need the 90% majority, the prey, to see the violence.
It's theater.
It's terrorism. The definition of terrorism is violence used to create fear for political aim. The savage outbreaks are curated. They are designed to make the prey population look at their neighbors and see monsters.
This brings us to the supplier. Because if this is a manufactured crisis, someone is manufacturing it. And in the movie, we find out it's Assistant Mayor Bellwether.
The sheep.
The sweet little fuzzy sheep who's always getting pushed around by Mayor Lionheart.
And this is where the allegory gets incredibly dark. If we accept the premise that the night howlers are crack cocaine, and we accept that this is an organized distribution campaign, then Bellwether is not just a disgruntled secretary.
Who is she?
She is the deep state. She represents the administrative state, the intelligence apparatus that operates behind the curtain. The report draws a parallel here to a very specific, very controversial figure in American history. Gary Webb.
Oh, wow. Okay, for the listeners who might not know, who is Gary Webb?
Gary Webb was a journalist in the 1990s who wrote a series called Dark Alliance. He uncovered evidence suggesting that the CIA was aware of and effectively facilitated the smuggling of cocaine into Los Angeles to fund the Contra rebels in Nicaragua.
So the government or elements of the government were complicit in the drug trade to fund their own off-the-books wars.
Exactly. The government wasn't failing to stop the drugs. The government was the wholesaler. Now look at Zootopia. Who is running the drug lab?
Zug, the ram.
Who does Doug answer to?
Bellwether, the assistant mayor.
So the government is running the drug lab. Bellwether is acting as the broker. She is using the night howlers to fund her own war. Not a war for money, but a war for political capital. She is the Dark Alliance incarnate.
That is chilling. Because it reframes her entire motivation. She isn't trying to protect the prey from the predators. She's manufacturing the danger.
She is creating a false flag.
Define that for us explicitly. We hear that term thrown around a lot.
A false flag operation is an act committed with the intent of disguising the actual source of responsibility and pinning blame on another party. Bellwether attacks the predators, makes it look like they're the problem so that she can step in as the savior.
It's the classic Hegelian dialectic, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution. She creates the problem, savage predators.
Yeah.
The public provides the reaction, fear. She offers the solution, total control.
Precisely. And she even says it. Do you remember her line near the end? Is the most important line in the movie?
Fear always works.
Fear always works. That is the philosophy of tyranny. That is the mantra of the authoritarian state. Bellwether understands that you cannot control a happy, contented population as easily as you can control a terrified one. If people are scared, they will trade their freedom for security. They will accept a police state if they think it keeps the monsters away.
And to make that fear stick, you need an enemy. You need a monster. Which leads us to the most uncomfortable part of this deep dive, the race war.
Yes. We need to talk about the demographics of Zootopia.
The movie states it clearly at the beginning. The population is 90% prey, 10% predator.
Which is a deliberate sociological coding. It mirrors the statistical minority populations in the United States and many Western nations. You have a dominant majority and a distinct, historically stigmatized minority.
And the movie leans hard into this idea of biology.
It weaponizes it. The genius and the horror of Bellwether's plan is that she uses the predator's own biology against them. She frames the minority not just as culturally different, but as a biological threat to the majority.
This is eugenics rhetoric.
It is scientific racism. It's the idea that violence is in the blood, that it's genetic.
There's a specific term the report uses, the superpredator myth.
Right. This takes us back to the 1990s again. There was a political scientist named John J. DiIulio Jr. He popularized this theory of the superpredator. He argued that there was a new breed of young criminal coming out of inner-city neighborhoods coded as black and brown youth who were radically impulsive and brutally remorseless.
Fatherless, godless, and jobless, I think was the phrase used back then.
Exactly. The theory was that these weren't just kids who made bad choices. They were inherently broken. They were civilization's nightmare. And because they were viewed as having no conscience, the argument was that rehabilitation was impossible. The only solution was incarceration.
And Zootopia recreates this perfectly.
It does. Think about the press conference scene. This is the turning point of the film. Judy Hopps, our hero, steps up to the microphone. She's asked why the animals are going savage. And what does she say?
I have the transcript here. She says, it may have something to do with biology. She says a biological component, something in their DNA.
Something in their DNA. In that moment, she detonates a cultural bomb. She isn't just reporting facts. She is validating the worst prejudices of the majority. She is telling the 90% that the 10% are ticking time bombs.
It's the idea that civilization is just a mask, that underneath, they're still just killers.
That rhetoric destroys the social fabric instantly. It signals that the minority must be monitored, profiled, and quarantined, not because of what they did, but because of what they are.
And the fallout is immediate. The movie shows this montage of the city falling apart.
From utopia to apartheid in a single news cycle.
We see predators losing their jobs. We see a gazelle moving away from a tiger on the subway.
That subway scene is heartbreaking, but it's also very specific. It shows the erosion of trust. But the most damning example of institutional erasure is Officer Clawhauser.
Oh, poor Clawhauser. The cheetah at the front desk. He's the nicest guy in the movie. He loves donuts.
He is the friendly face of the ZPD, but what happens to him?
They move him to the records room in the basement.
Why?
Because,
Babe.
well, Chief Bogo says they need someone else out front.
Because they need to sanitize the institution. They cannot have a predator as the first face the public sees. It's bad optics. It doesn't matter that Clawhauser is loyal. It doesn't matter that he's a good cop. He is a cheetah. And in this new regime, a cheetah is a liability. It's institutional purification.
It's so cynical. It's not about safety. It's about managing perception.
It's the math of fear. The report actually breaks this down into an equation. $5 is incident, MC.IDTA2.
Whoa, okay, talk me through the calculus here.
$5 fear, that's what the state wants to maximize. To get fear, you need two variables. $100 is incidence, you need bad things to happen.
That's the night howlers.
Exactly. You artificially inflate the incidence. But incidents alone aren't enough. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, no one is scared. So you need $1 media saturation.
You need the cameras. You need the news choppers.
Yeah. You need the press conference. When you multiply artificially inflated incidents by state-controlled media saturation, you get maximum fear. And the result of that equation is consensual control. The majority asks to be oppressed because they think it will save them.
It's terrifyingly effective. And it makes me look at the good guys in the movie so differently. We talked about Bellwether being the villain. But Bellwether couldn't have done it alone. She needed a useful idiot.
She needed Mayor Lionheart.
Right. The lion. He's the one who imprisoned the savage animals in the first place.
Lionheart is the perfect example of how a corrupt system plays right into the hands of the deep state. He tried to cover it up. He illegally imprisoned the savage animals in that asylum.
He said he was trying to protect the city. He didn't want to panic.
But by doing that, he validated Bellwether's narrative. When the truth came out, it didn't look like a mayor trying to solve a crisis. It looked like a predator mayor protecting his own kind. It looked like a tribal conspiracy.
It's a pseudo-operation.
Exactly. Bellwether let him dig his own grave. By hiding the bodies, he made himself look like a villain, which cleared the path for her to take power. It's 4D chess, and the lion was playing checkers.
But if Lionheart is the useful idiot, what does that make Judy Hopps?
The enforcer.
This is the part I struggle with. Because Judy is the protagonist. She's the one we follow. She has big purple eyes, and she wants to make the world a better place.
And that is why she is the most dangerous character in the film.
Explain.
Judy Hopps represents propaganda in its purest form.
Propaganda. Propaganda for the police.
Yes. The film invests a lot of energy in making us sympathize with her struggle. She's the little guy. She's being discriminated against. We root for her. But if you strip away her underdog narrative and look at her actions as a law enforcement officer, she is a walking civil rights violation.
Okay, let's look at the rap sheet. What is she guilty of?
Let's start with her very first interaction with Nick Wilde.
At the ice cream shop.
Before she even speaks to him, she sees a fox. What does she do?
She puts her hand on her canister of fox repellent.
Racial profiling. Immediate. She sees a member of a specific demographic and assumes threat. She carries a chemical weapon specifically designed for that demographic.
But she doesn't use it.
The intent is the violation. She is profiling him based on species. Then look at how she investigates. She blackmails Nick. She leverages the system tax evasion to force him into servitude.
That's extortion.
She brings him to Mr. Big. She effectively threatens a citizen with organized crime violence to get information. And then the press conference, we already discussed that. She incites a race war.
But she apologizes. She cries under the bridge. She realizes she was wrong.
Personal regret does not absolve systemic damage. She is a tool of the administrative state. She provided the soundbite that Bellwether needed to launch the pogroms. Judy Hopps is the friendly face of the police state. She makes the system look cute.
It's the aesthetic of the police that's interesting, too. The report mentions the militarization of the ZPD.
Look at her uniform compared to the other cops. The rhinos and elephants are wearing dress blues. Standard uniforms. What is Judy wearing?
She's wearing, well, it looks like tactical gear.
It's a Kevlar vest. Arm bracers, combat boots, knee pads. She is dressed for war. She isn't dressed for community policing. She is dressed for urban combat.
And the vehicles. Those massive black SUVs.
Large, somewhat blocky SUV-type vehicles. Armored personnel carriers. The movie normalizes the idea that the police should look like the military. It normalizes the idea that they need tanks to patrol the streets.
And the bureaucracy itself. The Mammal Inclusion Initiative. That's the program that got Judy in.
It's tokenism. It's a PR stunt. The system wasn't designed to actually include her. Look at the furniture in the precinct. It's all built for elephants and hippos. She can't even see over the desk.
I always thought that was just a visual gag about her being small.
It's a visual representation of systemic exclusion. The architecture of the institution is literally not built for her. She is allowed in to check a box, but the system remains rigid. It hasn't adapted to serve and protect everyone. It has just expanded its hiring pool to mask its nature.
So if Judy is a tool, and Bellwether is the deep state, and the night howlers are crack, where does that leave us at the end of the movie? Because the movie feels like a happy ending. Bellwether gets caught. Judy and Nick are partners. Everyone dances to Shakira.
The happy ending is the final lie.
Why? Bellwether is in jail. The bad guy lost.
The individual bad guy lost. The system survived.
How so?
Think about the trauma that was inflicted on that city. For weeks, maybe months, the 90% was told that the 10% were biological monsters. Neighbors turned on neighbors. People lost their livelihoods. You don't just switch that off because one sheep goes to jail.
The seeds have been planted.
Exactly. The biological savage narrative is now out there. It's in the cultural water supply. Even if people know it was a drug this time, the doubt remains. What if she was right? What if it is in their DNA?
It's like the Superpredator myth in real life. Even after the crime rates dropped, even after the theories were debunked, the stigma remained. The laws that were passed because of that fear mandatory minimums, 3 strikes, those didn't just disappear.
Precisely. The structure of control remains intact. The ZPD is still militarized. The surveillance apparatus is still there. The government just changed management.
And the system actually got stronger because now they have Nick.
That is the ultimate tragedy of the film. Nick Wilde.
Nick is the victim. He was profiled as a kid. He was muzzled. He lived his life on the margins because society wouldn't let him be anything else.
And what is his reward at the end of the movie?
He becomes a cop.
He joins the oppressors. He puts on the uniform of the agency that profiled him. He joins the institution that failed to protect him. He is co-opted.
That is heartbreaking. It's not liberation. It's assimilation.
It's the system proving its resilience. It absorbs the outlier. By making Nick a cop, the state validates itself. It says, see, we aren't racist, we have a fox. Meanwhile, the armored SUVs are still rolling, and the tactical gear is still strapped on.
So Zootopia isn't a story about breaking the system. It's a story about learning to work for it.
It is a story about how the state consolidates power. It showed us exactly how it's done. Step 1, manufacture a crisis, Night Howlers. Step 2, create a demon, the savage predator. Step 3, offer a solution, the police state. Step 4, absorb the dissenters, Nick and Judy.
And we applauded. We walked out of the theater, humming the song, buying the plush toys, completely missing the fact that we just watched a breakdown of the CIA's playbook.
Because the propaganda was perfect. It hid in plain sight. It used bright colors and cute animals to sell us a nightmare.
You know, I started this deep dive feeling nostalgic. Now I feel vigilant.
Good. That's the appropriate response.
But what does this all mean for us, for the listener? Why does it matter that a Disney movie from 2016 has these layers?
It matters because media literacy is the only defense we have. If you can't spot the Night Howler protocol in a movie about bunnies, you won't spot it when it happens on the evening news. You won't spot it when a politician tells you that those people are a threat. You won't spot the false flag.
We have to look at the flowers. We have to ask, who is planting them?
And we have to remember who is running the lab.
This has been heavy, but necessary. I don't think I'll ever be able to watch this movie the same way again. I don't think I can look at Officer Clawhauser without seeing a victim of administrative purging.
And you shouldn't.
Before we go, I want to leave the listeners with one final thought. Something's been rattling around in my head since I read this report. We talked about how the movie ends with a dance party, everyone is happy. But there's a scene in the credits where Bellwether is watching it from prison. She's angry. But is she really defeated?
I don't think so.
Because the mechanism she built is still there. The fear she unlocked is still there. She proved her hypothesis. She proved that you can turn a utopia into a dystopia with just a few blue pellets and a press conference.
She proved that fear is the most efficient currency in politics.
And that is the terrifying lesson of Zootopia. The villain might be in a cage, but her philosophy is running the city.
Fear always works.
Fear always works. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time. Try to stay skeptical out there.
And watch what you watch.
Goodbye, everyone.